Hello, welcome everybody to our first episode of our Cloudicorns podcast. My name is Lucia and
And with Lucia is Diego Dora. That's my name. Uh, so as Lucia has mentioned, this is our first podcast, and the idea is that we bring this new space where both of us we're going to be sharing some ideas, and also we're going to be interviewing some guests. But tell me, Lucia, what is this podcast really about?
That's an excellent question. So, the idea behind this podcast was you and I were talking a lot about SAP, a lot about cloud, a lot about Google Cloud in particular, and we said we have so much knowledge and there's so much going on that it's a shame that we're not sharing it with the broader community. So,
Yes.
that's how it was born. We're going to talk about
Hmm.
the state of the art in enterprise. We're going to talk about cloud in general. We're going to talk about Google Cloud. A little disclaimer there, Google Cloud is my employer, but views are my own. I'm not expressing Google Cloud's views. You know how it is.
Perfect. Hmm.
This is an independent thing. So I may talk about the other cloud providers as well, and I'll be happy to. Um, and topics wise, I like talking about what I know, and I think you, Diego, are on the same side here. I like to talk about integrations. I like to talk about software development, analytics, general development topics as well. I have a technical background, so that's most of the content that I will be serving.
Hmm.
But yes, the one of the important things here is probably the name. So I'll pass the question to you, how we chose the name.
Really? Okay, why not? Yeah, sure. So we definitely, I guess let's break down the name, right? It's Cloudy Corns. So cloud, we like to talk, talking about cloud development and cloud technologies, and then unicorns. We really like unicorns. So
That's true.
therefore, as you can see in background, in Lucia's background, and also you can see on my computers. That's our logo, by the way. The most likely is going to be up in here, and I'm just pointing up to those who are actually going to watch the video. To those that are just listening to it, yeah, just go and watch it. But yeah, so that's the reason why we just name it like that, right? So our focus for the most part is going to be cloud technologies and how we, as Lucia was mentioning, how we integrate those cloud technologies with on-prem, and just best practices and so on and so forth. So that's why we got to that name in the first place.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, basically, we really like unicorns. Sometimes I
Yes.
feel that the kind of people who we're talking to in this podcast, like the architects and basis and developers and app developers and maybe cloud SAP developers, they're kind of a unicorn, especially since I started drifting out of the SAP core and building in other technologies. I started admiring how unique that kind of profile is. The amount of knowledge that
Oh
these
yeah.
profiles have in terms of business, and you don't
Yeah.
see it anywhere else. So yeah, that's one of the things that come to mind when we say unicorns within the SAP realm.
Yes. And as this is our first episode, one of the things we wanted to do was just to kind of introduce ourselves. So if you know us, most likely this is one of those things. When you start a podcast, most likely your family and your friends are going to watch it or listen to it. But to those who are, tuning in with us and you don't know who we are, today's idea is just to have our first podcast to talk a little bit about ourselves, right? And maybe just also talk about a little bit more about the target. What are we trying to do with the podcast, and who are we aiming? So let's get the second question out of the way, maybe, in terms of who are we trying to target, as Lucia mentioned, or who are we intend this podcast to be. Of course, it's for everyone. Everyone can listen,
Yes.
but we always have one or the other person in mind. This could be solution architects, basis administrators, sysadmins, developers, of course, but it could be a person who is very interesting to know what is the latest in terms of technology and how those technologies integrates, in the enterprise world, mainly, with SAP and with Google, but as Lucia also mentioned, with all other cloud providers. But something that is very I will say very personal to us is we both come from Argentina, and we both have different path on our professional career, but we all have a different experience on how we ended up where we are and the people that we work, right?
Right.
There are certain demographics that have easy access to events. You can say it like that, or easy access to online communities, right? But as we both come from Argentina, we know the South American region. We know that the sense of what we both of us we call community, and please correct me if I'm wrong. But what we both call community goes beyond what is the common sense or the common known as SCCM. For us, community is colleagues that we have been working for the past 15, 16 years, that maybe they never post a question on SCCM, or maybe they never read a blog or write a blog or read a blog or watch a video on YouTube, but they are as knowledgeable as us, and they have an excellent career path, and they did great things. And one of the things that we wanted to do, which is very dear to our hearts here, is really to be as inclusive as we can and to amplify these people that maybe they are unknown to the known community, but they are really excellent professionals and they have a lot of value to share to with us. So if you are one of those persons, right, you can always reach us and we will be more than happy to have you here. But yeah, that's something. I don't know if you want to add something else on that regard.
No, while you were describing this persona, a couple of examples came to mind. Friends from Latin America. The first time I went to TechEd, I actually told somebody I'm going to TechEd, and this person had been in the SAP space implementing, great practitioner, fantastic consulting, super knowledgeable, and she had been implementing almost side by side with me for at least a decade. And she said, "You're going where?" And
what's that?
what are you talking about? And that is where, that's the kind of practitioner that I tend to talk to when I feel I'm getting sucked into my own echo chamber, right? So you and I, we started together, actually. We early in our careers, we shared a starting point with an AMS project that I enjoyed a lot. And we were both in Buenos Aires long before I moved to Toronto, where I live today. And back then, a lot of these people, and even today, they were not aware of TechEd or any of these surrounding events. They didn't even think of asking to go, right? So that's the kind of person that hopefully we tear down the language barrier through YouTube and the automatic translation, and we can provide a platform for them to give an opinion, to tell us what their world looks like. For you and I, we have visited Waldorf at least once in our lives. We have friends within SAP. There's always somebody we can ping in that in that area for advice, for help. We know where to look for stuff. And that doesn't necessarily apply for these people. They just do a frantic Google search. They land on a random blog post. They're not necessarily paying attention to the name of the person who's building the blog post. While in my experience, sometimes I recognize the people, and I have had the pleasure of having met those people, right? So I feel there's two sides of the community, and yes, this podcast is aimed at including both sides of the community, of the SAP community. So introducing ourselves, back to that part. We both, as you said, come from Argentina. You live in Buenos Aires. I live in Toronto in Canada. I actually got my first dose of the COVID vaccine today, so I'm very happy. I'm hoping, I'm hoping that everybody
doesn't hurt too much.
Yeah, no, and actually, I feel happy and I feel a little guilty because I know that I'm super privileged to be able to have the shot, and not everybody's there. So yeah, my hopes are that everybody can get their vaccine soon. We met in the AMS project. I studied in Argentina. I think you and I, we actually studied in the same university.
For a while, you know, to those who knows me, they know that I bounce, you know, from university to university every once in a while. One day I will get my degree. In the meantime, I just have fun. It's okay, don't worry. But you know, let's go a little bit more in detail, you know, in detail about you. Like we know your full name, we know where you live. Maybe you can say where you got your degree. You actually have 2 degrees, right? So you have your I'm not going to talk about 4 years. Just go ahead.
I always struggle to translate it. I have a bachelor's in information technology, and then I did an MBA just to realize or confirm that I'm not interested in being a CEO. Like technically, you complete an MBA.
I spent 2 years of my life, and I know that I don't want that check.
And I know for certain I'm not interested in being a CEO after those 2 years of my life. And it was a lot of hard work, and I met fantastic people. But yeah, I completed those 2 in the Universidad Argentina de la Empresa. It's weird. I don't know.
It's okay. Everybody's going to get that name for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
In case you want to translate it, you can just go and translate in Google Translate for sure. But yeah, so I always ask this question. I know the answer from you, but I think our listeners, will be very interested. How did you start your developing career? Because you have a very interesting background. So maybe you can talk very quickly about your high school, and then you can just explain how the heck did you ended up coding.
That's a great question. I started when I was doing high school. I went to a school that was heavily focused on languages, and back then I was very good at languages in general and grammar. For like about 3 years in high school, I would be analyzing like the grammar and the syntactic analysis of what people were saying live, and doing philosophy around languages. So I said, this is my thing. I want to be somewhere doing something about linguistics or similar. I earned a lot of money for that time, and for a teenager, teaching Latin. My school taught Latin, and I found my passion there. I loved Latin. And then while I was close to graduating, I started dating somebody who is a developer, and he started teaching me about computers. I actually met him because I was interested in fixing computers, and I had always loved spending time with the computer, doing whatever, writing. It didn't matter. I just liked being with the computer. And so I met this guy, and this guy introduced me to C. I actually still have the book that he gave me, the Kernighan and Ritchie Introduction to C, and it's in Spanish.
The best book ever. Yeah.
When we broke up, he gifted it to me, and I brought it all the way here. I only brought a select amount of books, and that one came, of course. So at the same time, everybody was telling me, you're great with languages, and I sucked at math. So my first year after high school, I was doing teacher's training college for English. I was hardly paying attention. I was acing all subjects, but I was there late. All of my teammates hated me because I was very lazy, and I got a job fixing computers, like hardware. And that
during high school or after?
A little bit during high school, and then after. And then, it was the weirdest thing. I was the only woman in this team of electronic engineers and people who were going physically to fix people's computers to their homes.
Yeah.
So I would carry like this huge bag with tools and testers and all this kind of stuff. And I learned a little bit about electronics, and finally this guy that I was dating, still dating at that time, said, why don't you just start university in engineering, and you're gonna get you're gonna figure out math. You suck at it because you don't pay attention. And he was right. So yeah, I started in that. I had a job fixing computers, and I started in this university. And this guy, I was looking for another job. I was getting tired of like going to people's houses. I didn't feel safe. And this guy said, "Hey, we're hiring, and you're gonna get trained in this ABAP thing." And at the same time, I was interviewing for one of the major newspapers there for a PHP development thing. And
the greatest language in the world.
The greatest language in the world. The PHP thing was more sexy, and the ABAP thing, like, nobody knew what. Including my boyfriend at the time. He was like, well, it doesn't sound good. And the pay was higher with the ABAP thing, so I went with the ABAP thing. It pays
well, right?
It pays well.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. I needed to pay. I was paying for a university back then, and I needed like a proper salary to pay for my books and university, and maybe
as we know, it's not a cheap university, by the way.
It's not a cheap university. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that's how I ended up developing. I sucked at it at the beginning. Like the training was very funny because the people who were training with me, they had a technical background, and I didn't. I had completed my C book reading by myself. I didn't really know what a database was. So imagine me trying to understand a select statement in ABAP into an internal table. So the first week I cheated. And I think the people who were training me back then, they knew I was cheating. They knew I was cheating.
Yeah. So you were just going and opening the report of someone else and just copying the code and pasting it,
Yeah. We would name the reports like Z something, the name of the exercise, _ the initials. And there was this guy, Matias Ruacha, shout out to him. I would copy everything from him. And he knew. He wasn't impressed. We ended up being great friends.
I'm amused about this, but it's okay. We can be friends. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, he wasn't impressed. I was very loud at the time as well, and he wasn't impressed by that either. But we ended up being great friends, and I appreciate his support at the time. Within the first couple of months, I figured it out, and actually by the time we met, you and I met in this AMS.
You were already there for a while, right? Like I think 5 or 6 months or less. This was in 2008, I think.
That was 2008. Yeah, I would have to do the math. But I think by the time you and I met, I already had 2 years.
2 years. Yeah.
Of doing stuff. And I became chaotic. Like when I understood the ABAP thing, I said, "Oh, I want more." And I think you remember we had the same lead, and she was like, "Please stop going into platforms like the mainframe or the operating system."
Tivoli, yeah. I do
and Tivoli, and defining making friends with the operations, like touching stuff that I wasn't supposed to touch.
In production.
In prod, debugging in prod, one of my favorite things. Yeah. So yeah. I rambled a little bit there, but yeah, that's how I started. Maybe.
But since we are already in these trains, how did you continue? So we were in that project at some moment in time. I left. I think 2009. I left, and you stayed there for a little bit longer. So just to put it in perspective, you started working for a small company, but then you moved to a big company.
Yes.
Well, at the time I was in the big company, and then I moved to the small company. So we kind of switch positions. So what happened, and how did you end up in the big company?
Yeah, so exactly. So in this AMS project, I was a contractor for one of these big SIs.
Mm-hmm.
The project before the AMS one was an implementation one. I was a contractor to that one too, but it was an oil and gas implementation. I made friends with the people. We had a call today with the people who were implementing there. And a while later, they were all implementing for this huge retail company. And they, in this big SI, and they pinged me, like, hey, we have a position open for a senior app developer, why don't you come over? And I interviewed. I remember one of my first interviews was at a bar.
Okay.
Yeah. Because they already knew me, but they're like, well, this is like an informal thing, but let's catch up with what's going on. And they told me what they were doing. They were all traveling to Mexico. They were having a great time. I was still in university, but I liked the idea of going and implementing like in an international place.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's how I moved over to this big SI. I ended up spending like 8 years at this big SI.
8 years, really?
Yes.
I thought it was less. Holy.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I thought it was less too, but I spent this first. I started as a senior developer, and not too long afterwards, I was promoted to like a team lead or project manager. I found out at that place that I actually like methodology, that processes.
I like this. This is useful.
This is actually useful, yeah. Like, this is something that is making my life easier. Documenting. Like, suddenly, and I wasn't new to documenting, but we were implementing, like, CMMI, and we had, like, some of it was overhead, but a lot of it was very useful in collaborating with different teams and delivery centers to like say these are best practices, and let's all figure out a way of having like the same, when we say quality, this is what we mean, and that kind of thing. I found out that I actually enjoyed that and doing that. And yeah, by the time I left, I had interviewed at least three groups of people, like in different stages, all of them coming fresh out of high school, the same way that I had entered the ABAP world. And I had designed the curricula for the training, and they got training, what we would call the schools.
Oh, you mean the training schools, like the escuelitas?
Exactly, for
ABAP.
Gotcha. Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't know how to say that and how to express that, but they were groups.
Schools.
Right, like schools. They were not fish. They were actual people, but they were mostly first, second year of university, and I designed the curricula for the training, trained the first group, and then those people trained the second group, and those people trained the third group, and so forth. So yeah, it's one of the greatest pleasures I got from being a manager at this big SI was actually seeing these people creating knowledge and training other people and growing. And today I get to talk to some of them, and they are customers of Google Cloud. So and they're leads in these customers. So it's great.
Yeah.
It's like, it feels like home. I get cozy every time I talk to these customers and about to these people here. So yeah, it moved. It flowed basically. That's
and in between you have your step on SAP. So you work actually for SAP for a while, right?
True. Yes.
Three years.
And you had a lot to do with that.
Did I?
You had a lot to do with that because you introduced me to Mr. Craig Schmechel at a code jam. So, and I was fascinated by this idea of code jams. I think that code jams are a great way of doing what we're trying to do here, by the way.
Yeah.
Bringing knowledge to people who are not looking to pay for it, who are looking to actually touch something. I've always loved code jams, and that's when I met Craig. And then because I was following Craig, I saw that they have an opening for SAP, and I applied, and I got it. And suddenly I was the one, they signed in the curricula for code jams. I was the one advocating for access to free stuff in trials. I wasn't always successful, but that was normally my yeah, that was generally my mantra, especially with HANA Express. HANA Express was the free version for HANA, and even today it's free even for productive use. So I did everything I could to make HANA Express available. Of course, it wasn't my thing, right? But I was in touch with engineering to the point that I was annoyed enough for them to let me put code in there and modify the scripts and and test and kick the tires before HXC came out, and give them feedback from the communities. And these code jams, they were great arenas for me to test and see what was going on and how people used and approach development of HANA. I think there's still today some tutorials of mine running around, and Thomas Young has taken over all those, and he made them better, and he's maintaining the ones that are still alive and they're still relevant. I still have some Git repositories that are out there that I once I found that I had the superpower of open sourcing code, I abused it as much as I could, because coming from where we come from, I think is very important, and it's a great way.
Yeah.
Like we understand that paying a training in dollars is expensive, and the more the merrier, right? So that's what I did there. I remember that we were starting to work with Google Cloud at SAP together with Amazon and Azure, and I got to kick the tires with the three major cloud providers that SAP had a partnership with, or has a partnership with, and I chose Google Cloud because it was very easy for me to ramp up. So the user experience was great, understanding the concepts was very easy, and time to coding was very short. So between me signing up and starting to do something, it took me minutes, and the ramping up was very easy for somebody who, as you know, I had been doing ABAP, I had some basic knowledge, but hadn't touched the container in my life. So that's how we started with Google Cloud.
Yeah.
And same thing, they had an opening for a position that was very interesting to me, and I applied. I interviewed, and I interviewed, and I interviewed, and I got it. I cannot talk a lot about the interview process. If people are interested, look it up in YouTube. There's a lot of resources that were very helpful. It's not easy. It's very time consuming. And I remember I wasn't very optimistic that I was going to get it, because I was like, well, there's probably millions of people applying for this, or maybe not millions, but at least 100, couple hundred. Why would they give it to me? And it happened. So here I am.
Here I am. How many years after? So 16 years since you started, roughly? 16
years since that initial talk of, should I do PHP or should I do ABAP development?
Or should I do the one that pays more?
Exactly.
Yeah. I know how that goes. So let me see if I have. Okay, so let's talk. I think we still have some time to focus on you. Let's talk a little bit about what do you do in your spare time? If people wants to know you a little bit better, like what do you do when you have any free time?
Pre-pandemic, I used to travel a lot. I love extended my trips, and this is something that I enjoy about my work. I love this about my position at SAP, and pre-pandemic I used to travel a lot, so that was my thing, going to museums, getting lost with my phone, with connection and a map, and walking around the city. I consider myself a foodie, so I hunt for new food experiences whenever I have a chance, authentic and highly rated and that kind of stuff. Now that the pandemic has been locking me in, I still like to travel, so whatever the weather allows for it. In Toronto, I rent an RV and I go to a park and I spend my time there, hiking, walking around. And the other thing I've taken up recently is aerial yoga. So I used to, one of my colleagues in Google Cloud that I met while I was at SAP, and we used to travel together, Casey, he introduced me to acro yoga, and that is with a partner. So during the pandemic, I kind of do yoga with a partner because the distance thing is not compatible with that. So I started, instead of a partner, now I have a yoga swing that is hanging from my ceiling, and yeah, that's basically what I do.
Good. And then this is one of the questions you brought up, and I thought it was really good. Your favorite thing or person in the world today, right? Because this could change.
Oh, that's that's easy and it's dumb. Please don't judge me. My favorite being in the world is my cat.
Do you want to say a name?
Yoda.
Of your cat?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good.
He doesn't respond to Yoda. He responds to Yoda. In Spanish.
The Spanish version.
Yes,
of
the Spanish version. He doesn't understand English. But yeah, he's he's the being that brings me peace. He doesn't judge me. He's like my safe space. He purrs. He loves me unconditionally. So yeah, that's my favorite being in the world. The next favorite thing is probably food. Very basic.
Any specifics you would like to recommend?
Normally, it's chocolate / Nutella.
There you go. The Nutella. This has history. You will go in 2008. You will go and get Nutella at mid afternoon with the guys when we were working on that project. I remember this very vividly.
Yes.
Good times. I will say.
Yes.
All right. Anything else you would like to say about yourself to our listeners / viewers? Whoever is on the YouTubes.
No, I feel like I've been ranting about myself more than I normally do, so we should probably switch to you.
All right.
So let's rewind back to how you started your career as a developer.
As a developer, okay. So, this is as far as I remember because I started very little. But I remember I was roughly 6 or 7 years old. I was coming from, so I used to go to elementary school was from 8 a.m. in the morning to 12. Then I have a break of 90 minutes, and then I would go to 4 p.m. I remember one noon I just went. I was having lunch with my mom, and I said, "Oh, one day I'm going to write, things on paper, and those things will be programs." And my mom was like, my mom was the type of person she will support you to do whatever you want. Like she's like, "Mom, one day I want to go into the circus. Let's do this." And then I told her this, and she was like, "Okay, and what do you need?" It's like, "I need a computer." At that time, I didn't have a computer, and she's like, "Okay. Let's get you a computer." So she got me a computer. I broke it like 15 times in a year because every time I was just trying to install Windows, uninstall Windows. And that time it was Windows 95 and it was coming with Plus. So I was just breaking everything, all over the place. And my mom she was working at a big company at the time, and one of her friends was a former computer scientist that she ran out of jobs at that time, and she started working at this company with my mom. It was an accounting firm. and her son, he was a computer scientist. So he was way older. I was like 8, and he was like 22. So he would come home and teach me CorelDRAW, and then one day I was like, I don't want to learn CorelDRAW. It's just I want to code. And he's like, what do you know? And he installed a C compiler. And I was like, okay, what is this? It's like, well, with this you can just write code. And then it's like, well, but what can I write? It's like, and he just gave me, small programs. And the typical program that you always do when you're starting with C is the Fahrenheit to Celsius thing, right? The converter from Fahrenheit to Celsius. And I was just copying the code from the tutorial. I didn't know what the heck I was, doing. And then, at some moment in time, I stopped seeing this guy, and I think it was roughly now 10, and I want to learn, to code properly. I just don't want to copy code and see what happens. It's just, and I sign up for Tortoise course.
Oh,
the Tortoise,
yeah.
So whoever doesn't know what is Tortoise, was a small program that you will use a tortoise, and you will say go 90 degrees right for, I don't know, 2 centimeters, and then you can draw with that thing, and it's a very sequential type of thing. And I love it. I was just drawing all the time, just having fun. With my class after school. I think it was from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. When at that time, my neighborhood was safe and they wouldn't kill you on the streets and whatever. But and I was going by myself. From this place was 15 or 20 blocks from my house or whatever. And then I signed up for a high school. Sorry, there was a specialized in computer science. As soon as you started the first year, when I was 12, you will start programming with C, and then you will do C from the first year to the fourth, and then you will do from the fifth and sixth, you will do Visual Basic 6. And the problem is that I didn't get in. So it was too many people applying to this high school, and I didn't get in. And I was super bummed out, right? I was super depressed during the summer, and my mom was like, no, I'm going to make you go into that high school. It's like, well, but they say no. It's like, well, so let me check. So my mom ended up talking with the governor of Buenos Aires, the secretary of the Ministry of Education, and she was like, I want my kid to go to this thing. I was, the typical nerd. I am the typical nerd. So my grades were really high, during my elementary school, and I was always signing up for the mathematical Olympics and things like that. So she pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and she got me in. The problem is, like, this high school was so complex that January and February, which are usually the month where you're still in summer vacations in Argentina, they were giving leveling courses on mathematics and physics, because the majority of the kids that will enter there, they will be completely lost. I entered that at the end.
Oh wow!
Because I was not meant to be in that high school. So long story short, I got into that. I fell in love with C. I absolutely love C, not C++, C. And then I just start coding. I think with ActionScript. I think roughly around second or third year. This was already on my personal time. I was doing when Adobe didn't exist. It was Macromedia Flash, not Adobe Flash. And I was just doing animations, using mathematics and physics forms, to apply to the movement of things. And I would spend my Saturdays and Sundays and Saturday nights with my friends just coding at night until 7 a.m. in the morning, eating ice cream. And then I finished high school. Again, nerd, very high degrees, grades, and so on and so forth. And so my family has a history of working on an airline here in Argentina, Aerolíneas Argentinas, for those who knows it. My family has been in Aerolíneas Argentina since 1950. So my grandfather was an airplanes engineer. My dad was a flight attendant, and and my dad was kind of like, hey, are you gonna go working here, like all of us? My brother was already a flight attendant at the time. I was like, I don't think this is my call, Dad. What should I do? He's like, just give it a shot. You can go and work there for a while, and then you can just try to transition into the computer department. And if they don't allow you to go there, then you can just quit, and we're in. So I signed up there. I ended up working as the person who sells tickets and says, okay, give me your passport. And in Spanish it's called agente de tráfico, which is traffic agents. That translates horrible. But it's basically, I'm in a counter receiving your passport and your ticket, and I'm just sending you somewhere really nice while I'm staying there. And if the flight doesn't go, then you yell the heck out of me, for lack of a better word. And yeah, I spent 18 months there. I learned a lot about human behavior and customer service. And I never, ever, ever, I never did it, but since that moment on, I never yell at the person who, brings me anything, anywhere. I really understood the pain of spending 8 to 12 hours, a day, just, doing customer service. And after those 18 months, I remember it was the 9th of July, which for those who doesn't know, that's the Independence Day in Argentina. The 9th of July, I went to the base, chief base person, at Ezeiza, which is the international airport in Argentina. And I was like, I'm quitting. This is my uniform. These are my pencils. Because they give you pencils,
You really had a uniform.
I had a uniform. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Lucky me, I don't have pictures, but I have the whole uniform with the the tie and the thing, and I was pretty good at it. The funny thing is, like, you actually use the system when you're working there. It's called at that time it was Sabre. It's an American company, and you can actually use the interface and do some crazy things. It's kind of for those who doesn't know, at that time it was kind of a terminal system, like if you were working with Linux. And yeah, I was the one installing all the video games and the emulators for my colleagues, not to be bored when they were there. But in parallel, I was just doing PHP,
of course.
the best language in the world, and it's just building websites. I think the first website that I sold, I was 15, and the first system that I built for in school, actually, I was 16. And for those, for both of those, I made a decent amount of money. I was super happy about it. But then, Independence Day, I quit. In the meantime, I was at the university, but I have this problem with, it's going to sound very bad, but I have this problem with teachers at university. They are not very motivated when they're teaching, and I just can't hold myself in place. So I just leave the thing, or just do something else, or whatever. So I spent 6 months only at university, passed all my classes, because for the most part, all the stuff that I was seeing, that I saw, my 6 years of high school were almost until the 4th year of university or something like that. So I was just going to classes and passing and going and so on and so forth. And then Accenture, which is the company I started working with, they interviewed me, and it was like, okay, we have this position for this language called COBOL, and I was like, okay, COBOL is fine, it's okay. And then the 6th of February of 2006, they called me, and I have to go to this training, and I will be for 1 month in the training, and if I pass that training, then they will hire me. And the person that comes to give us the training says, we just want to let you know that the person who was intended to give you the training is not available anymore, and we just decided to change this training from COBOL to ABAP. And I was like, awesome. Are you paying me? He's like, yeah, we're paying you. Awesome. What is ABAP? And then I was looking on Google, what the heck is ABAP? I don't know what it is. If you pay me, I code for food, right?
Exactly.
So if you pay me, I do it. It's okay. So we took this whole month training, and then the first thing that I did, I think, was March. It was a user exit on a CRM system. I didn't understood what I was doing. I was just, someone, my technical designer come and say, you need to copy paste this code here, and so what is my report? So I want to do an ALV, and it's like, no, this is a user exit. And it's like, okay, what it is?
Wow.
It's a user exit. It's like, cool, awesome.
They just threw there. And, okay, let's see if you can swim.
Let's see if you can swim. And at that time, I was making, I think, 800 pesos, which, forget about the currency, guys. It's okay. It was little to no money. I was actually making more at the airport than, at that job. But I didn't care because someone was paying me to develop, which is insane at the time. It was insane. And then I just, start working different projects. I worked for, oil companies and automotive companies and so on and so forth. And I ended up in this AMS project that we're not going to mention the customer, but we ended up there. We met each other. We have a lot of fun. I remember one of the first things that I remember about you is like I was playing the Day of Tentacle of my Nokia phone. I just installed an emulator. It was like, what? Can you have this on your phone? It's like, yes. It's like, oh, this is the best game ever. It's like, yes, I know. And then we became friends. And there was, it was a really cool group of people there. By the time that we met, I was roughly 2.5 years at Accenture, and I think it was an architect or something like that. And my career at Accenture was super fast. After I left that project, I ended up working for Accenture internally. I was running the internal systems of Accenture, and I started with a team of 7 people, I think, or 8. And by the time that I left 4 years after, it was like 45 in 3 different countries. It was in Spain, Philippines, in Buenos Aires, was here in 2 cities. I learned a lot, and I made a lot of friends in all places. To this day, I'm still talking with some of my friends in the Philippines.
Yeah.
And of course in Chicago, which was the main office. And the way that I ended up in Cervantes, I always, for me, it's such a funny story. I spent roughly 6.5 years at Accenture, and I got a message on LinkedIn, and someone tells me, "Oh, hi, Diego. We're interested in your profile." At that time, I was playing with the first trial version of a gateway, right?
Oh.
It was, you could download the thing, install it, and just play with it. We did some kind of a paper with a friend of mine. His name is Luis Garcia.
Oh yeah. I worked with him.
Yeah.
Great time.
A crazy cat. And we wrote that paper. We published it on LinkedIn just for the law. It's really it was not meant to be anything. And then someone sent me a message like, "Oh, we're interested in your profile. We're actually trying to create some data services. This person, Klaus Heinrich, wants to have a call with you." And I was like, okay. I just copy paste Klaus Heinrich on LinkedIn, and it's like, who is it? And no results. And it's like, okay, that's weird. No results. Okay. And then I just, I said, well, maybe in Google. And I just drop it on Google, and I ended up on the Wikipedia page of this person, which is, the owner of the company I'm working today. And yeah, he doesn't use LinkedIn. He has a Wikipedia page because he's an awesome person. So I was like, okay, so why this person and his company wants to interview me? So I just go to the interview. We spent like 90 minutes, almost 2 hours with him. Another person, his name is Gunta Hajduk, wonderful person, wonderful human being. He's a doctor in physics, but also now upper, like many people in Melbourne.
Of course. That's a usual career path.
That's the usual thing, yeah. And he spent like 35 years working, and creating wonderful things on the HR module. And so I passed that interview, and they say, okay, you can just join the company and become a developer. And at that time, I was doing, my days at Accenture were pretty rough. I was spending 8 hours doing management and 8 hours doing development and coding and architecture and research and so on and so forth. Because really the career at that time, I'm not sure right now how it is, I was more focused in managing, and it's kind of, it's instinctive for me not to leave this thing, this wonderful keyboard
I completely hear
out
that.
of my hands.
Yeah.
And you know how this is. So I was like, oh, it's a good time for me to kind of ramp up my my technical skills again a little bit more, and also have a more normal life. So I start working at this company. I start going to Germany, like 3 months in Argentina, 3 months in Germany, 3 months in Argentina, 3 months in Germany. And I think what was the first time that I go, it was something between June to August. And when I met them in person, it's like, oh yeah, you great guy, you seem to know what you're doing. It's like, well, you know how that goes. And they asked me, what do you think about having 1 or 2 developers with you? And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? And it's like, yeah, because we think we can build a team. It's like, yeah. I don't think I mentioned it in our interview, but I had a big team, so I can definitely do it. It's like, how big was it? It's like, 50 people. It's like, okay, good. So they decided to start. I start hiring a lot of my friends, and today we're roughly 30 people. And it was a great journey of just going from zero to the team that we have today, which is great. And yeah, in terms of languages and things, I like we will say in Argentina, I don't say no to anything.
Exactly. Yeah. Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. Yeah. So I program in C and C++, and Visual Basic 6, which today is is most likely everybody hates it. C#, Objective-C, Swift. At Savanta, I spent a lot of time, with JavaScript. We built one of the first teams of UI5, I think worldwide at the time, 2013, when Fury came out. And from there, my background is really backend, like your background. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I love to explore things, and because I have this background, I start with ABAP. People pay me really doing ABAP, but I was playing with Linux when I was 13 years old. So I have an advantage of previously doing other things and just having a more open-minded. But even today, I see a lot of ABAP developers. They start with ABAP development, but then they just expand. They just do Java and they do Node.js, and that's something that I really like always. To share, right? Like, you can be more than one thing.
Yes.
You don't have to be in a box because what do you do? ABAP. Oh yes, I know how the ABAP developer thinks. It's like, do you? I mean, we're all individuals. We're all different. Yeah. So I don't think how an ABAP developer thinks. I think some patterns that some ABAP developers have. We share between each other. But one language doesn't describe it. That's what I wanted to say. But yeah, so to this day, I'm the managing director of Savanta in Argentina. I'm running the lab here. As I progress in my personal life, I don't spend so much time going back and forth because I have 2 daughters and a wife that will most likely will kill me. And from time to time they come whenever they can. But it's not so easy for me to spend 3 months in each location. But during the first, I think, 5 years to this day, I'm roughly 9 years working at Savanta. But the first 5 to 6 years, I spent a lot of time in Germany, and I made a lot of friends. I love the country, I love the culture, and likely, the people that I know in Savanta are super open-minded. It just juxtaposition to whatever pre-ideas some people will have about certain countries and cultures. So yeah, that's kind of how I started, just talking to my mom, and how I didn't end it. I'm here. There's still a lot of things to do, I would think. But yeah, just that's about my career. Basically.
Yes, and I think you already responded to that, or it's pretty obvious. But what does Diego do in his spare time?
Good question. To be honest, I don't have a spare time. I have work time and I have family time. So you can call spare time family time. No, but it's just to this day. So my daughter, my youngest, is 11 months, and so it's 9 and 16, and in 16 days. So soon she's going to turn 1 year.
Yeah.
And then my oldest, she's 2.5. So, and my wife, let's not talk about her age, but really, my time is the girls. Not because I have to, of course I have to, but I just love it. They love to play here in my office, and I have to arrange a little bit, to record this because otherwise it's going to look like a mess. But yeah, kids all the way.
And that probably answers your favorite person/thing in the world.
Yes, I have 3. I cannot say one because then one or the other will kill me. Internally, maybe I have prearranged set for that. But I'm not gonna name it. I have 3 favorite persons in the world.
That makes a lot of sense. Yes, so I think it's. We mentioned something about the career paths. I get this question a lot, actually, from people who are starting. And what I would summarize it as is it doesn't really matter where you're coming from. If you had, I was also lucky that my dad had always been very tech forward and always liked having technology at home. So I had a computer from a very early age. My mom was always a champion about letting me do whatever my passion was. So I think that had a lot to do. But that mentality of if you're coming from physics, if you're coming from linguistics, if you've done computer science your entire life, or maybe you are doing something else. I've met even lawyers that were consultants.
Yes.
And the beauty about the consulting life is, as you say, the traveling, understanding the business, different business, and you mentioned different industries. I'm very curious about industries. Having been to, and you probably had the same experience, being to a hangar for Aerolíneas Argentinas, when implementing SAP, being to a chicken coop, an actual chicken coop, implementing SAP, understanding oil and gas. I think there was a boom back in the day for oil and gas. Being in an actual supermarket, going past the meat and the fridges at the supermarket because we were implemented for a retail company that was massive. We both went to Benton Harbor for this customer. I don't know why we cannot mention the customers. I think we can mention the customers. If people go into my LinkedIn, they will know that I spent a large amount of time, and at the same time at Whirlpool, the Whirlpool project, and that was a lot of fun. So yes, as our next episode, and that's kind of the next thing. Shall we say what's coming on our next episode?
Absolutely, I think we just need to create that intrigue to our listeners and viewers. So go ahead.
Great. So I think our next episode is going to be centered in the people who want to give a platform to, right? These people that are not in the influencer circle or
circles,
yes.
or SCCM by so the actual platforms, right? As we were talking at the very beginning, there's so many brilliant people that don't touch a blog or don't write anything, and this is the people that we want to focus, because they definitely have a voice and they definitely are doing their job. Maybe they're focusing 100% on that. And we can be amplifiers of that. So, as you were saying, in our next episode, the idea will be to interview not one, but 2.
Yes,
of those people, correct. Right?
That's correct.
Perfect.
And also, before we close, I'd love to get feedback from the audience. I know it's probably going to be our friends and family. Thank you if they made it all the way here. Thank you for listening to our rants and our intros. And I'd love to hear what they have to say.
Absolutely. So leave your comments on the comment section on YouTube. You can write us. We are going to post on both in every platform where we put the podcast. We already created a Twitter account, so you can write us via that, or you can just leave a comment down below on YouTube. Okay.
Yes. Thank you so much to everybody who joined us today, and see you next month.
Bye. Thank you.